Well, hello, everybody. This is Jason from the Coolest Coast. We're going to have a nice conversation today about a subject that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but is very necessary to talk about. And we'll get to that in just a second. First, I want to thank our generous sponsors, easy for me to say, the Preserve at Lincoln Park, Mike Hall Builders. Thank you so much for sponsoring the program and bringing these wonderful programs about our public library here in Manitowoc to the forefront. So, without further ado, good afternoon. All
Thank you,
right.
Jason.
Yeah, Sharon, you know what? I'm going to kind of let you take over here and introduce our guest.
Well, yes, thank you for having us on. This is Elaine Petrie. She's a funeral director at Harrigan Parkside Funeral Home here in Manitowoc.
Very
And she'll be
cool.
a part of our program this coming Saturday. We're excited to have her available.
So, death. You know,
In a nutshell,
in a nutshell, death is something that, I didn't think about until my like mid 40s. And then I started to think about it, and the reason is because I have a son. I have a child, and start to think about legacy, you start to think about what you're going to leave behind. You start to think, and realize, well, I'm not going to be here all the time. Health concerns come up, and most recently for my wife and I, as the community knows, we were very close to death, and really got us thinking. And when you're laying in the hospital, in pain, and you know, the chaplain comes in and says we need to do a directive. You're like, what is that? I'd never heard of that before. I never thought about that. Well, if something happens and we can't resuscitate somebody else, we need to know what to do. Now, that not really what we're talking about, but death has been on my mind for a long time. And it's not a negative thing, it's just kind of a reality that we're all destined to that place. No one here gets out alive. And so that's what we're talking about today. And Elaine, can you give me a little synopsis of what your program will be at the library?
Thank you. Um, as you said, death is something that unfortunately we all do have to think about. And it's difficult for some people, and I understand that. I don't want to think about my own demise either. But it's something though that when you do give it thought, it can be a good thing down the road. Not only for yourself, but for the people that you leave behind. So in my presentation on Saturday, I'll be kind of talking about like who should think about their funeral plans and why and how you should think about those funeral plans. I kind of want to provide a framework for people to be able to sort of safely think about their own passing and what will happen after that. Um, so I've got some handouts that I have prepared that I'll give to the folks that are there, and kind of go through that, and we'll, I hope, talk about the different options and things to think about as a group and have a lively discussion about death, I guess. So that's what I hope to do for Saturday.
So, Sharon, why this type of programming at the library? I mean, we are all going to that place, right? Whatever place we think we're going to, I think we're going to. So, the why this type of programming for the library?
well, I think what better place, right? So, personally, I've been involved in the funeral industry for over 30 years as a freelance writer. And so I've interviewed many uh, funeral directors, vendors, people in the industry, and talked to them about, again, the inevitability of death and also the way that our Western culture deals with death, right? In my opinion, it's pretty unhealthy. It's scary. I think one of our viewers here commented, "Death scares me." Of course, it does. The unknown scares anybody, right? But that's why it's all the more important to talk about it, right? To demystify what's out there. Um, and our program is not only going to have the perspective of Elaine, a funeral director, but also ways that the average citizen can deal with their grief in terms of journaling, in terms of writing down memories, and even doing some art to help memorialize our loved ones.
So, we're not just talking about our own demise, but when we lose a loved one, and we've all lost people. And I remember giving the eulogy, for instance, at my father's funeral, and it was just really hard to get through. really difficult to get through. And I had no counseling. I had zero experience. I'm not a great writer, so I just got up there and shared some memories. And
Hmm.
I've been to services where people get up and share their favorite memories of the person. Just a recent funeral I went to was like that. And I really like that, but everybody can pre plan this. And it sounds a little morbid to most, but like you said, in our culture, it's a little bit different. We have this a fear of that, where in other cultures, they actually embrace that
Correct.
and view it as a transition period. And I think that's a really healthy aspect. So when you have a funeral, Elaine, you can choose a lot of different ways to celebrate and remember the person that you care about. Um, so it's not just about the pre-planning, but it's about the actual execution of that event. And have you seen some pretty unique things over the years?
Yeah, I've been a funeral director for about 20 years, and I've seen a lot in that time span. But yeah, I mean, I think when people think about funerals, they have that idea in their mind of a kind of like traditional funeral where there's a casket and people are standing around and they're very glum and sad. And of course, it is a sad occasion, but I think what's been happening over the years is that it is trending a little more toward that. I think a life celebration, is what
Mm.
a lot of people call it, where we hear from families saying that their deceased loved one didn't want to have everybody there crying and sad, and they want it to be a happy time where people recall all those special memories and the good
Sure.
times that they had together. And so it is kind of taking that turn. And I feel like that is a little bit of a healthier, um, perspective, because I think it does lend a little more toward a healthy grief cycle and healing, to focus on the, the well-lived life and
Yeah.
all the accomplishments and fun things that happened and the love that brought that deceased person, into being such an important part of the mourner's world,
Right, right. Yeah, when I was laying in the hospital and I was thinking about this subject, obviously, a lot, and being so close to it, I thought, you know what? I want to celebrate. I feel like, if I were to die today, I've lived a pretty darn good life. I've had wonderful adventures, wonderful love in my life, both given and received. And I don't think I'd like people just kind of hanging out. I mean, have a drink at the door. Let's get the jukebox rocking and have a party because it's a celebration of life. And I'm so glad to hear that that's trending that way. Sharon, can you give us a little bit more about the what is actually going on here? So when is this happening?
So the event is this Saturday, October 26th at the Manitowoc Public Library. At 10 a.m., Elaine will do her presentation on preparing for death, memorialization, funeral, cremation, whatever your choice may be. We'll take a short break, and then at 11:30, Michelle Bondi, who is a local artist, will do a hands-on remembering your loved one through art program. You'll make a small keepsake to remember a loved one. Take another short break, and then at 1 p.m. I will present a workshop on obituary writing, remembering your loved one through words. And by
Mm,
obituary, I don't mean death notice, right? The death
right.
notice that you have in the paper. I'm talking a memorial piece about your loved one, kind of what Elaine was talking about, something more personal. And I'll have examples of ways you can do this. And not only is it helpful and it's necessary to get that out, but it's a cathartic action for the mourner as well. You said,
Yeah.
Jason, it was difficult delivering a eulogy, and of course it is, but there's also a catharsis in remembering the loved one and putting it down on paper.
That's right. That's right. And it also gets you thinking about your own mortality and how important it is to, use your life or, have gratitude for your own life in the time that you have. It's become in very clear and crystal focus for Tina and I of Oh, wow, we are really grateful to be here. Like that is our like how are you guys doing? Well, we're above dirt. This is wonderful. Look at all these wonderful things. So it gives you an appreciation for your own life, also remembering others. So it's a whole day event. And the I love creative writing, and I've never thought of writing my own obituary. Is that something
Mhm.
that you've done with people before? Like have they
Yeah.
Elaine and Sharon, in your experience, do people write their own
Mhm.
obituaries? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's whether somebody is, for example, terminally ill and they might, dictate, do a video, write
Yeah.
something down. I'm sure, Elaine, you've probably seen it at the funeral home as well, or, work with someone to put something down.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like somebody will want to write their own obituary because they want to control the stories that are being told or what's being said. But most of the time, I think it's a helpful thing that people want to write that and formulate that obituary for their families so that it's there for them when the time comes, and that they would have a framework for the family to expound upon too.
Right.
And with pre-planning, a lot we kind of describe it as like it's like your last gift you can give to your
Mm,
family. If you think about it, um, if you've been in that situation where you've lost a loved one and their funeral arrangements have all been made ahead of time, the family feels like, wow, our mom is still here, and she did this one last thing for us,
yeah.
and it's so I think a lot of the planning and when people do write their own obituaries, they feel like they're helping their family that will be left behind, so.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't want my son to be burdened with that. He'll be grieving, and in the midst of his grief, I don't want him to have to pick out and deal with monetary things, or all the choices that have to be made, and everything else. It's really lovely that people do that beforehand. It really truly is a gift of love. So what
Mhm.
a wonderful thing. I mean, death is inevitable, and we should all face it, and we should all look at smack dab in the face and deal with it. And sounds like a really good program. I think you'll have a good response with it. I really appreciate the library tackling subjects like this as well. The library is super cool. Obviously, we Tina and I are major cheerleaders of you guys, but just to be able to talk about this, something that not everybody is comfortable talking about, right, Sharon?
Yeah, and like you say, Jason, it's hard. I never know how many people are going to come to an event. I really feel passionate about this topic, and I've gathered people who are going to come that day that are equally passionate about it. So
Hmm.
I hope people will not be afraid, um, and we'll ask a lot of questions because
Right.
we're all here to answer questions for them and help them uh, deal with the unknown that's coming
Right.
up.
Mhm.
So, death in a nutshell, it sounds like it's going to be a nice, almost like a workshop
Mhm.
to work on, and what you've always wanted to know, but we're afraid to ask, and what happens when you die, and why not be prepared. So that's going to happen Saturday, October 26th at 10 a.m. And like Sharon said, there's also going to be a workshop at 1 p.m. So I would encourage everyone to go down to the library and participate in this. And I already know the answer to this question, Sharon, but it's completely free, correct?
Of course, everything
Yeah.
at the public library is free. Thank you for bringing that up.
So if you need more information, I put the library's website up there on the screen, and you can just go there, and there's plenty of stuff and other programming that you can find out. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today and talking about this serious subject. And I hope that your workshop, I'm going to call it a workshop, is well attended. And yeah, it's awesome. Thank you for bringing these subjects to our to the public through the library. It's just amazing.
Thank you, Jason,
Yeah,
and the
thank
best
you.
best to you and Tina.
Oh,
Mhm.
for sure. Thanks so much. Thank you, ladies. All right, this concludes this episode. We will see you next time, next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Once again, thanks to our sponsor, Mike Howe Builders. Mike, you are awesome. Talk to you later.